things like consumerization, cloud technologies are really, really big, broad topics encompassing platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, public cloud, private cloud, hybrid clouds. They all present you different challenges, but they also therefore present you with different opportunities. I'm really focused more on the kind of software side, so I'm not going to delve into platforms and infrastructure and all those kind of things. We have other people at the company that do those kind of things. I sit on top of what they do at the kind of deliver software solutions that are very much user-facing. What does the cloud mean to you guys as IT managers, as CIOs, CTOs? Well, I think a lot of this has already been covered today, but I think certainly from the information worker perspective, it's about rapid deployment. That some of the services that are available online via cloud technologies are literally minutes away. So in terms of the agility that gives you, delivering new information worker solutions out in the business, it's without precedence. And obviously the next kind of big thing that I think will hopefully work in the demo is the remote access story. So obviously if you're going to deliver software solutions on-premise and you've got people out and about on the road doing their day jobs, then you're going to have some challenges getting them connected back to your on-premise systems. And obviously there's lots of options out there, there's lots of pros, lots of pitfalls depending on the technology stack that you look at. Moving to the cloud, obviously, the remote access story is really quite straightforward because all you need is an internet connection. Everything else is just taken care of for you by the fact that you've got that internet connection. And I think in terms of certainly putting a kind of Microsoft spin on it, obviously Office 365 is a big thing for Microsoft and for the partner community. One of the key differentiators of what Microsoft are doing with Office 365 is it isn't just a pure cloud offering. So a lot of the competitors out there are looking at cloud as, well, you either go to the cloud or you're on-prem, and that's basically the choice that you make. Whereas with the Microsoft stack, you've very much got the choice of, do you go down the on-prem route? Do you go 100% to the cloud? Or, as I think the vast majority of people are going to end up doing, do you have more of a hybrid cloud deployment, where you consume some services from the cloud, but the rest of the services are on-premise? A lot of that decisioning is obviously going to be based on your priorities at the time, costs, and what it is that you're actually trying to deliver. So in terms of kind of public clouds, private clouds, infrastructure as a service, etc., 365 is really a public cloud offering. Anyone can go and subscribe to 365. Therefore, it's a public cloud. It's a multi-tenancy solution. So Microsoft in their data centers in Dublin and in Amsterdam have got a whole bunch of servers, and you don't get dedicated servers for your hosting. You get a share of that infrastructure that they're putting in. And certainly from a costing perspective, the 365 story is really compelling, particularly if you have an enterprise licensing agreement with Microsoft. You can convert your CALs that you buy today as part of enterprise agreement into what's called a USL, a user subscription license for 365. So it can be done very, very cheaply at the point that you need to true up through the course of your EA. And of course, one of the key things around anything to do with cloud is it's available for anyone. Anyone can go and subscribe to 365, but it's not necessarily going to be the right choice for you. And I think that's going to be one of the key decisions to, kind of key takeaways from today. All of this stuff is all possible, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the right choice for you and for your organisations. So, what does consumerisation mean? Well, I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand consumerisation as a topic. A lot of people I find that I'm talking to out and about are of the opinion that consumerisation is mainly about devices, that it's all about the kind of bring your own device to work kind of story, and people will have phones of differing types, be them Microsoft phones or non-Microsoft phones, tablet devices, iPhones, iPads, Android devices, etc., etc. The list goes on and on and on. But actually, I think certainly from an information worker perspective, the topic of consumerisation is actually a much bigger, broader topic, because it's about the agility. It's about having anywhere access and the things that enables you to do. It's about encompassing some of the social technologies that are available now and how those can be exploited and leveraged inside the firewall within your organisations. The other thing that I'm certainly going to touch on this later on in my presentation is probably the biggest challenge facing you in terms of consumerisation is one of identity. But I'll come on to talk about that in a little while. But all of those things kind of added together actually result in it being more of a mindset shift. And that's the challenge that you're facing kind of culturally within the organisation, that people are expecting things to be delivered internally by you as IT managers and IT directors much faster than you're used to delivering things. Because people can go to the App Store, and if they want to do some online collaboration, they can install the Dropbox application, and away they go. There's an app for that. It's easy, it's quick. You don't need to do any kind of requirement gathering. You don't need to do any infrastructure build. It's there, it's quick, it's easy. And that's starting to become the expectation of a lot of people certainly from a consumerization perspective. Just one little standout thing that I wanted to cover off was the use of HTML5. I'm not going to go to town really on HTML5 today, but just wanted to make you aware of what really this means in terms of consumerization, because that is one of the most important open standards that is in the process of being ratified today, that will enable a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about and a lot of the things that you're going to want to do. Basically, HTML5 is a way of doing some really clever things with HTML. So things like Flash, Silverlight that you may be using today in your organizations, HTML5 can to a large extent replace those. Offlining. One of the really useful things of HTML5 is that it supports offlining. So I don't know how many of you use Gmail for personal email, but the way that Google implemented offlining is that they use HTML5, so it only works in a limited selection of browsers today, but you can take your mailbox offline just using HTML5 in the Google Chrome web browser. So it being a standard, it doesn't really matter what people are looking at in terms of devices. So iPhone, iPad, as in on the iOS operating system, or Android, or Windows, or whatever, it matters not if you're looking at delivering things using HTML5. So that, I think, is one of the big standout things. If you want to have a look at some of the capabilities of HTML5, I'm sure you're able to use your favorite search engine to go and read it up. I would point you in the direction of the Microsoft demo, which is cuttherope.ie. It's a little addictive game. It's not necessarily something that you're going to go and show to the entire business saying, look what we can do with HTML5. I will warn you, though, it's very addictive. So once you get started, you're not going to be able to walk away for probably about an hour because you're just going to want to get to the next level. So the shift. So I mentioned that there is this kind of mindset shift of the people within your organization. I used to talk to people about kind of, culturally adopting technologies like SharePoint and how organizations potentially aren't ready to exploit a lot of the collaborative and the social features of a platform like SharePoint. But actually, I'm finding myself having fewer and fewer of those kind of conversations simply because of this paradigm shift that's taken place. And I think the Henry Ford quote is particularly relevant, that the kind of point that he's driving out there is he started to make something that was new and revolutionary. If he'd have said to people what they wanted, they would have just asked for a faster horse rather than the product that he actually created and started selling. And I think that's where we're at the shift in terms of IT service delivery, that if you go and ask people what they will want something that's just a bit better than what they have today. That's what they will tell you. But what you're actually you're able to deliver them using cloud, using some of the consumer devices, technologies like HTML5, does give them that big mindset shift away from it just being an iterative new piece of software, new service, new application that's being delivered, to something that's completely different. The information worker. So information worker 1.0, excuse my use of little versions, it's a little noddy thing that I've done for many years and will continue to do. So information worker 1.0 is primarily an email user. Uses very few other technologies, is probably deeply wedded to a 5-year-old BlackBerry because it works for him. He can do email and he can make phone calls, and that's all he's really interested in doing. He might have signed up to LinkedIn, but he probably seldom uses it, doesn't really exploit it for the value that can be offered. And he's generally going to be an office worker because he doesn't work particularly productively when he's out and about because he's limited himself to voice and to email. Whereas information worker 2.0 probably carries one or more smartphones, probably has an iPad or other tablet device, as well as a corporate device as well. Avid user of LinkedIn, Probably on Facebook, probably on Twitter, because they're exploiting the value of the network. Obviously, Metcalfe's law of the value of the network is proportional to the square of the number of people connected to it. The more people that are on your network, the more value there is from it. And so Information Worker 2.0 is the kind of person who embraces a lot of this modern technology, a lot of the social technologies that are out there, and is the up-and-coming person in terms of demographic that you are recruiting right now. We're not yet, I don't think, in the world of everyone that we're recruiting now being what you probably heard the term a digital native, someone who has spent the majority of their adult life using digital technologies all of the time. I don't think we're quite there yet, but certainly in terms of the millennial generation, Generation X, Generation Y, these are the people that are being recruited into your workforce right now, and their expectation of what you're able to deliver them as IT managers and IT directors is probably quite different from what you're actually capable of delivering them right now on your existing technology sets. To give you an example of what's happened on the internet since I've just made my little speech against this slide, over 13,000 iPhone applications have been installed while you've been looking at that slide. 11 million, approximately, instant messages have been sent while you've been looking at that slide. 100,000 tweets have been sent in that amount of time. That's the extent, that's the volume at which the world is moving to these kind of technologies. Information Worker 1.0 saw the world in a very kind of hierarchical, linear fashion, and the org chart is a great representation of that, I think, but fundamentally problematic, because this isn't the way that most organisations need to work anymore. Work is no longer hierarchical. I, for example, let's say that that's me there, sitting on an org chart for Trinity. I spend a lot of time working with our sales guys who are all the way over here on our org chart. That linear hierarchical relationship bears no resemblance to the people that we actually interact with and the people that we actually work with on a day-to-day basis. The modern org chart should look something a lot more like this. Put whoever you want at the centre of it, put yourself at the centre of it. Information Worker 2.0 cares not for the abstract authority of the linear and hierarchical relationships of a traditional org chart. They're more interested in who is actually going to help them get their job done. Who can help move the customer from A to B in the most time-effective, cost-effective way? And that's the person who is at the centre of today's org chart. So, a book that was, I would recommend you all read this book, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic. Published back in 1999, believe it or not, over 10 years ago. Clue Train Manifesto made a lot of, not predictions as in, kind of Nostradamus predicting the future, but spoke a lot about the shift in social and the cultural adoption of technologies and how the internet was playing a part in the way that people live their lives and the way that people did business. One of the key points that I wanted to pull out here is the org chart is dead in terms of day-to-day working. Yes, you're going to need to pictorially represent the structure of the organisation and lines of reporting and responsibilities, but in terms of actual day-to-day working with information and knowledge today, it bears no relevance anymore, because the information workers of today don't care who they report to. They don't care who other people report to. They just want to go to the person who's got the best skills to get the job done in the most time-effective way. And organisations end up being non-hierarchical, and everyone just ends up hyperlinked to each other. Overlay that into something like LinkedIn, where, yes, you can see some abstract hierarchy there. You look at my LinkedIn profile, for example, you'll be able to see some of the hierarchy within Trinity, but you'll also be able to see that I'm hyperlinked across to a lot of people within different organisations and across the internet. And that, again, speaks to the power of the network, Metcalfe's law. So, the thinking of Information Worker 1.0, it's not about the org chart, it's not about necessarily the tools that you're providing him to do his job. He's facing new challenges, and he's used to using things like geolocation-aware applications on his mobile phone. He's used to things like presence awareness, things that know when he's online and offline, things that know when other people are online and offline. I'm sure that when Tony did a session this morning on Linked, you'll have spoken about the Jelly Bean status for green, red, online, offline, etc. That is just so valuable to be able to port that into other applications and systems. And it's more about connections and networks and contacts and being able to actually be effective and productive rather than the kind of information worker 1.0 way of working. I don't actually think that this is more about thinking outside the box. I think it's more that the information worker of today is no longer bound by email. He thinks outside his inbox, not just what are the emails that I've got to process. Is a very different mindset. However, he might not be your best friend because he might be a little bit of a maverick. He might be out there thinking, oh, you know, I've got this problem to solve. I need to get this kind of solution. If that person is, as they quite often are, a quite senior person within the business, they might have budgetary sign-off. They may be able to just go and implement a little departmental solution. You may not even be aware that that has taken place because he can go and subscribe on his credit card to a cloud service that can be online in minutes. The 50 people that report into this person can be using it the following day. All your corporate information could be flowing up onto that cloud service and you don't even know it's happening. So, does that make this person a maverick a bad person? Or does it make him your most vociferous, passionate, early adopter, champion, ambassador user out there in the business of what you can achieve by adopting the agility and the elasticity of cloud technologies coupled with consumerization of things like devices? Well, I think that's going to vary, obviously, on a case-by-case basis and an organisation-by-organisation basis. But he's out there, and he's doing it today. So one of our existing clients, I was talking with them only a fortnight ago, and they're having this exact problem, that a lot of their execs have iPads, and they're subscribing to things like Dropbox, Box.net, etc., and the IT director has got very little control over where that corporate information is being stored. Not able to do any kind of control, no governance, nothing at all. And so we're talking to them about adopting 365 because we can literally get them online with that the following day. And I'm going to show some of the device support stories for that. So, he's either uncontrollable and a bit of a lunatic, or he's your best friend. Either way, you need to be aware that he's out there and what he's doing today, because he is out there and he is doing it. And this is why he's doing it, because he wants to get his job done. He wants to be seen to being efficient, productive, profitable. So he's thinking outside his inbox, and he may be breaking some rules, but he's getting there, and he's innovating. So what are some of these challenges? Well, I've kind of touched on them to a certain extent. So once you go down the route of things like cloud technologies, where is your data being stored? Is it being password protected? Do you need to authenticate to it? Is it secured so it differentiates between when Fred accesses something and when Joe accesses something? Is it stored encrypted? What's the business continuity plan of the vendor that's doing it? What's their SLA on support? There are lots and lots of things to think about. And so is your IT challenge one of, well, this is going on, I need to start to control this? I would disagree. I think your challenge is not to control, it's to govern. So not to have any kind of draconian measures over thou shalt not do anything in the cloud and start to implement crazy firewall rules and stop people bringing in devices and all those kind of things that can actually stifle the adoption and the innovation that the adoption of cloud and consumerization can drive. You should look at governance. So not controlling it, but steering it, being aware of it, being involved in it, and just making sure that things are being, boxes are being ticked in terms of corporate compliance, etc. So, two approaches, I think, to this. One of them I'm going to call managing consumerization, which is very much an outside-in approach. So, you can look at what are the immediate integration challenges of bringing outside services inside your firewall, or rather to users that are inside your firewall. Look at things like guest networks, look at things like VPN technologies, virtualization, sandbox hosting, some private cloud solutions. The downside, I think, is that you're then not really going to be adopting this kind of stuff on your terms. You're being very reactive, and certainly from a day-to-day management and cost perspective, you're you're going to end up with multiple management tools, multiple management interfaces, and it then actually starts to make life harder to deliver IT service to the business rather than making it easier to deliver IT service. I'm not saying that's the wrong approach, it's just an approach. So the other option, I think, is to own consumerization, which is more of an inside-out approach. So you're involved in it, you're driving it, you're not just there in the wings trying to catch up. In order to do that, you need to develop a deeper understanding than you have today of the users that are out there, what they're doing, what their problems are that they're facing, and why they want to go and purchase whatever application it is, whatever cloud service it is, and start to understand where maybe some of your IT services are maybe falling short in terms of agility and reactivity in order to address those users with those kind of roles and those needs. Mapping that technology against the interaction that's required, certainly in terms of access, and certainly access anywhere is going to be a big thing, and of course device usage. So my big steer there, don't try and deliver things to different device platforms. Look at delivering to standards, because that way you're going to be device agnostic, and it won't matter what Apple do with the next version, what Google do with Android, what Microsoft do with Phone 8, etc. You've complied with the open standard, everything should just work. Note, I said should, not will. And of course, you've got a lot of these professional commercial tools available today. You could look at enhancing some of those with some of the kind of consumer appeal that's out there today with some of the offerings that I'm sure you're all aware of. I've mentioned innovation a few times through the course of this presentation, and it's because, and here we are with my favourite Drucker quote, businesses have two purposes. They market and they innovate. They market because they need to create customers. They innovate because they need to create a product for that customer to buy, or a service for that customer to buy. And that's basically it. Information Worker 2.0 is an innovator. There's someone that helps drive forward that business to make you more profitable, to make you bigger. The information worker is very much a kind of a pioneer within your organisation, because they're wanting to do this, they're wanting to innovate, they're wanting to do some new cool, fresh stuff. Give them the tools, give them the services in order to do that. Because innovation is very much the golden egg, and you really, really don't want to kill the goose. I was so tempted to put the picture of Goose from Top Gun on there after I'd put Maverick earlier, but it didn't really work. So, as I mentioned earlier, you've got a lot of challenges with cloud and with consumerization. Things like compliance, things like management interfaces, things like driving down cost, increasing productivity, all the standard kind of IT challenges. Looking forward into the future, whether you adopt these kind of technology and solutions or not, the biggest challenge I think you're going to be facing in the future is one of identity. Cloud-hosted services, how do you authenticate to them? How do you manage that authentication? How can your service desk help a user to reset his password when it's just a cloud service? You need to be aware of all of those kind of things. And that's, I think, where Microsoft are certainly kind of leading the field in terms of cloud technologies, because the 365 solution that you can just go and subscribe to has a really good identity story, because it's an extension of what you have today. So you've got Active Directory deployed on-premise today. 365, you can either have what we call a cloud identity, so users you provision into the cloud and you manage them separately as if it was another cloud provider, or you synchronize and federate. What I mean by that is the user object that sits on-premise today in your Active Directory, you can actually use the same set of credentials to authenticate to 365, the same identity. With it being the same identity, same mailbox, same link, same audit trail in SharePoint for your documents. Really, really compelling. And that is one of the key things in terms of delivering hybrid cloud, because it is just a natural extension of what you've got today on-premise. Some of the other vendors are not quite so advanced, and I think certainly they'll be playing catch-up with what Microsoft have done with 365 and the identity management piece there. But as you're looking at maybe some of the other cloud technologies that are out there, have identity in your forethought. How are you going to manage the user authentication, the authorization, and I think most importantly, the deprovisioning of those user objects? With it being a cloud-hosted solution, let's say I've got access to something that Trinity were using just off my tablet here. I'm obviously bring my own device. That's my device. I'm not going to hand it back the day that I leave. So I walk out the door. Access. I can still access all of that corporate information that I'm no longer entitled to. So how are you going to think about deprovisioning? 365 is a natural extension. Yeah? So you've got deprovisioning processes today, leavers processes. IT get notified by HR that someone's leaving the organisation. You disable or you delete their user object, they can no longer access anything. Within seconds, that activity is replicated up to 365. No one can access your information in that user that you've just deleted can no longer access your 365 information. Some of the other cloud solutions that you could look at are nowhere near that elegant. And so that's a big chasm, potentially, in your leavers process that someone could be working somewhere else, accessing potentially sensitive and competitively, sensitive information. Okay, so with that, I'm going to try and do a little bit of a demo. There we go. I don't know if any of you looked at any of the videos that were released online after Build last year, the Windows conference. But this is the Metro interface to Windows 8. Just like a lot of other touchscreen devices that are out there, you get tiles for applications. Not a lot to it, really. Particularly at the moment because there aren't actually any applications that you can just go and download and have a play with. The SDK is available, so if you've got development capability, then the guys can go and have a play, work out what they can do. I would strongly steer you in the direction of HTML5, even if you have to write some wrappers around that, because then, you know, if you end up having to do 80% of your code HTML5, 20% of it to make it work in Metro, happy days, because that way you've got 80% of that code written. So when you come to deploy it to iOS to work on an Apple device, you only need to worry about that 20%. You're not having to redevelop that same application from the ground up. The scenario I'm going to cover is that of an information worker, someone who's out and about, someone who's doing knowledge working, as Peter Drucker would say. So one of the things that information workers do is they go to meetings. We all have to do it. Some of us like them, some not. So, is anyone using OneNote? Big fans of OneNote? Yeah, I'm a really big fan of OneNote. I think OneNote's an excellent application, one I use all the time. And it's a lot easier to do with a touchscreen tablet because we can write on them. Excuse my handwriting. So, as an information worker, I've been in my meeting, I've taken copious notes in OneNote. I'm then going to jump on the train, come back to the office, or I'm going to jump on the tube, come back to the office, bit of a debrief with the rest of the team, and see what we can do to help the customer. So while I'm working on the tube, what I might do is actually make a start on our response document. So I'm going to fire up Word. So imagine here I am on the tube. You'll notice now that I now have no connectivity. I've just flipped the little switch to say I'm offline. That's not showing very clearly, but that's a picture of a computer and a network with a big cross through it saying I'm not connected. So I'm now completely offline. I'm going to make a start on my document. But obviously I'm going to cheat for demo purposes. I wouldn't want to have you all sit through me writing stuff. So there we are. I've made a start on my document. Not a lot to it really. Typing away, happy days. I've produced some content that I want to share with people. But I'd better remember to save it, obviously, otherwise I'd just wasted a bunch of time. So I'm going to save that into my marketing workspace. Just into shared documents, and I'm just going to call it something unimaginative like live demo. Splendid. So, in just a second or so, we should get a little pop-up box that comes up on the screen just here that says there is a file pending upload. So, I've been to a meeting, I've taken some notes, I've written a Word document. None of this is revolutionary, and you probably sat there thinking, Matt, why are you boring us with all this normal stuff that we're doing today? This is just completely not exciting. And I would forgive you for that because you're right. So, I'm now, imagine me emerging from the underground, I'm walking up the tube, I get out my tablet, I get the connectivity. What should now be happening is my OneNote file, which is stored in SharePoint in Office 365, will be synchronizing. So all of the meeting notes that I've taken will just be automatically synchronized back up to the cloud. I don't need to press any buttons. I don't need to give it a kick to make it synchronize. As soon as I've got that connectivity, it just synchronizes. You may think, well, what's the benefit in sharing meeting notes? Well, there's a load of people who didn't go to that meeting. If I can share the notes that I took, happy days. We're no longer reliant upon me holding all of that information in my notepad or in my head. And my Word document will have just automatically synchronized up to my 365 project site into my document library. And in the background, James has been stood over there merrily at the point that I said, right, I'm now going offline, and made a really big deal of it. That was his cue to upload something to 365 that would then have synchronized down to my tablets, and I would have got a little pop-up notification to say James has added a document to the marketing document library, and I would have been able to click through on that little notification to see the document and review it and do whatever else I needed to do. That's me with a Windows 8 tablet. Happy days. What if I've not got a Windows 8 tablet, and what if all I've got to work with while I'm out and about is an iPhone? Or another mobile phone device. So, there are a few different clients available for iOS. Some of them are iPad targeted, some of them are iPhone targeted. So if you're looking at buying any of these, be aware which device they're actually targeted at. The ways that work on an iPad, you can install some of them on the iPhone, but they don't look very good because they're designed to be on a screen that's that big, and they're being used on a screen that's that big. And the converse is true. So if you buy one that's just targeted at the iPhone and run it on the iPad, then it looks a bit naff because it's targeted at a screen of this size rather than one that's nice and big. So this is just one that's, that I use. This is called Filamente. There are others available out there. The reason that I'm showing this isn't because I'm recommending it to you in any way. It's the only one of the 5 or 6 that I've got running on my phone that actually outputs onto the VGA connection. So that's why I'm demoing this one, because it's the only one that you'd be able to see without all having to huddle around my phone. So, marketing photos. Wouldn't it be great if while you were out and about, you could take a photo and it automatically synchronise up to Office 365 within seconds? So everyone smile at the camera. Thank you very much. And so this is going to go up over, this is on 3G, so it's going to be slower but maybe a little bit more reliable. So that's just going to synchronise up to Office 365. And again, instant connectivity. Neither of these two devices are corporate-owned devices. Both of these are my devices. Neither of them are joined to the domain. The only kind of corporate connectivity or anything is the fact that I've got the wireless key so I can use them inside the office. Other than that, these are completely just consumer devices. So we've done the demo. So in closing, mindset shift. Henry Ford, people will ask for a faster horse, deliver them a car. It's not about what the technology can do, really. It's more about the expectation from the user base as to how easy and quick, when you've got the connectivity, this can be. Actually, in many respects, the fact that the demo didn't work because of connectivity speaks really about one of the big challenges here. If all your information's in the cloud and you don't have connectivity, you're kind of screwed. So, you'll notice that one of the applications I used there was called SharePoint Workspace. SharePoint Workspace is the offline client to SharePoint. Works both with your on-prem SharePoint and with your 365 SharePoint online. So I can work offline. I can take content offline, I can work on it, and then as soon as you get connectivity, that synchronization story happens. Unfortunately, thank you very much for putting the document up there in the right time, James, but I wasn't able to show that working. But it's actually a good point that I think has been clearly shown by not having decent connectivity, that you don't have access to data that you've not already made available offline. The information worker of today is no longer just about email. Thinking outside his inbox. And governance. Seek to govern, not to control. Information Worker 2.0 is an innovator. It's driving things forward. It's making you as a business more profitable. Don't kill the goose.